Let's be honest about something uncomfortable. Artists can talk about trauma, sex, death, war, God, politics, and every dark corner of the human psyche. But the moment they talk about money, suddenly people look at them weirdly. People will celebrate your bravery for expressing your darkest emotions. But try mentioning what you charge for your work and watch how the vibe instantly shifts. Why does money, the very thing artists need to survive, become the one forbidden topic? There is a very old idea baked into society. A real artist is someone who creates purely for love, passion, and meaning, not for profit. This idea dates back centuries. In the 1800s, European Romanticism popularized the archetype of the tortured, starving, misunderstood genius, someone too brilliant for society, too pure for commerce. Think Van Gogh, who sold only one painting in his lifetime. Writers like Keats, Shelley, and Byron shaped this narrative. Real art must be untainted by money, and that story stuck. In the early 20th century, artists in Paris, Picasso, Modigliani, the whole Montmartre scene, leaned into the bohemian identity. They lived in small studios, survived on cheap wine, and painted masterpieces in freezing rooms. Society romanticized their suffering. Struggle became part of the aesthetic. To this day, people glorify the idea of the starving artist because it makes the story more dramatic. But here's the twist. They were not actually anti-money. Picasso was one of the wealthiest artists of his era. Matisse had patrons. Dali signed blank canvases for money. But the myth stuck. If you want to be respected as an artist, don't talk about money. Let's talk psychology for a second. Studies from behavioral economics show that people categorize work into two emotional buckets: market norms and social norms. Art gets placed in the second category. So when you try to move it into the first, by charging, people feel a type of emotional betrayal. Here's an example. If your friend asks you to help them move, you help. It's social. If they offer you $5, now it feels insulting because money switched the category. The same happens in art. People think art comes from the soul, spirituality, inspiration, identity. So money contaminates it emotionally. When an artist charges, people subconsciously ask, are you still doing this for love? Are you still authentic? Has the art been corrupted? Even the artists themselves internalize this. A lot of artists feel guilt when asking for payment, like they're breaking an unspoken rule. Research from Duke University shows that when an activity is perceived as creative or meaningful, people resist connecting it to monetary motivation. They assume introducing money will reduce creativity even when that assumption is false. In other words, people think money kills the magic. And when artists talk about prices, society acts like they've shattered the illusion. A lot of this taboo comes from religion, especially Christianity. Throughout medieval Europe, the church was the biggest art patron, but the church taught that spiritual work is holy, money is corrupting. Artists are vessels, not laborers. This shaped how society viewed art. Instead of seeing artists as skilled workers, society began viewing them as mediums touched by divine inspiration. And if inspiration is holy, how can you charge for it? This mindset lasted for centuries and still echoes today. We don't tell engineers or lawyers or chefs that wanting money taints their craft. But artists? Oh, you're doing this for money? The tone instantly becomes judgmental. Now here's the paradox. We say artists shouldn't talk about money, yet the art world is one of the most money-driven ecosystems on earth. Let me explain. Modern art markets don't care about the purity of the art. They care about exclusivity, branding, scarcity, investment value. That $10,000 painting, half of that price is economics and hype, not aesthetics. But here's the twist. Galleries don't want artists talking about money because it reveals the machinery behind the illusion. They need the public to believe the art is priceless. Therefore, it just happens to cost a lot. Research from the European Finance Association shows that wealthy collectors buy art to diversify assets, for tax advantages, to store value, to avoid financial disclosure because art isn't always regulated. This turns art into a financial instrument, and financial instruments don't like transparency. So again, artists are discouraged from talking about money. When a Basquiat sells for $110 million, nobody is paying for the paint. They're paying for social status, cultural capital, and rarity. The industry thrives on mystique. Talking about money breaks that mystique. Here's something we don't talk about enough. Artists themselves often feel ashamed of discussing money. Why? Because society has fed artists a lifelong narrative. Don't be greedy. Just be grateful you get to create. Exposure is payment. If you're good, the money will find you. Artists hear these lines so often that they begin believing them. Especially in fine art circles, anything involving money gets labeled selling out. So artists hide their financial struggles to maintain an image of purity. Money conversations often feel awkward. Some artists avoid it altogether because negotiating feels intimidating. Artists are emotionally connected to their work. They feel guilty putting price tags on something so personal. Money is taboo in art because it forces society to confront hypocrisy. People want art but don't want to pay artists. People worship creativity but undervalue creators. People want the emotional impact of art but feel uncomfortable funding it. Talking about money breaks the fantasy. It reveals the exploitation, the class divide, the privilege required to survive as an artist, the reality that art is work, the fact that everyone participates in an unfair system. It's easier to say money doesn't matter than to admit we don't want to pay you. If you're an artist watching this, hear me clearly. You are allowed to talk about money. You are allowed to want money. You are allowed to earn money. You are allowed to live comfortably from your craft. You are allowed to reject starving artist mythology. Art takes time, skill, emotion, intelligence, sacrifice, mastery, discipline, imagination. Why shouldn't that be worth something? Society has spent centuries teaching artists to stay silent about money. Maybe it's time to break the taboo, not because art needs money to be meaningful, but because artists need money to be human. And there's nothing shameful about that.